Now let's go to calling a non-void method. So if a void method does not return anything, a non-void method returns something. As you can see, we still have instantiating same current location object, which is an object of point. We can see that what we're doing is we're using the current location object, and we're calling a method with dot, and then the name of the method is getExpose. Alright, so let's look for this method in the point.java file. Well, we found it. It's right here. And what is it doing? Let's go through each word again. We have public. That's the same as the void method, right? There's nothing different happening here. Then we have the keyword int. So it's no longer void. It's int now. That would mean, right, from context, that the program would return an integer. Are we right? Let's look at it. So this is the same, right, as the void method. We're just using the method's name, curly braces, because there are no arguments in this case, and the set of curly braces around the code that will be executed by the method. So let's look at this line right here. There's only one line, and it's return expose. Well, expose is the variable from earlier. It's an integer. So what are we returning? We're returning an integer. So our observation was correct. Whenever you want to make a method return a certain data type, you're going to follow the structure public. It doesn't always have to be public, but for this case, let's call it. That would put the data type right here. Data type. Or if no data type, we just use void. And then we'd use the method's name, parentheses, curly braces, and then any lines of code that go in between. That's basically how a standard method declaration goes in Java. So we're returning expose here. If we go back to the main.java file, we're actually doing this. You can see that we're setting an integer in this file called expose, and we're setting it to the value of current location.getExpose. This is perfectly valid because a non-void method will return something. It will always return something. So we can very well have that data type that it's going to return. And then we could also have a variable name equals, and then this right here, the object dot the method. It's valid Java syntax to store the output of this current location.getExpose, which is going to be an integer, to a variable. Now in this case, with the current location object, what would that yield? Let's start from the beginning again. If we start from the beginning, if we go to the main.java file, current location, these two integers are being passed in, 23 and 94. And we can see that there's a constructor here for two integers being passed in. And what this constructor does is basically initialize the expose and ypose variables to the values that we passed in, 23 and 94. So now expose is equal to 23 for the time being, and then ypose is equal to 94 for the time being. It can change if we had a method to change it, but for now it's 23 and 94. Now if we run the getExpose method, what does that do? Well, it goes here and it returns just the expose value. It's one statement that just returns the expose value. What is the expose value? As we discussed, it's 23 currently. So what we're basically doing is we're setting an expose to 23. What would this statement print out? 23.